Hi, everybody. I'm Lee from YardFarmer.co. I'm the multimedia director, and I'm joined here by Daryl, our fearless leader and founder. And thank you so much for joining us on our latest live endeavor. My apologies. It's been a few months since we've been able to do one of these because I don't know if you know this, but spring is a horrifically busy time of year for landscape designers.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts right now, honestly.
It
Yeah.
is pretty intense this time of year.
Yeah.
But we are here to answer questions. If you have questions about landscaping, we can even cover a little bit of gardening, even though we're not really a gardening firm, but we do incorporate gardens
We garden
into
because
designs.
we
Yeah.
feel joy when we garden
Yeah, it's
for
good for
obvious
us.
reasons. Yeah.
It's
If
great for
anybody
us.
watching doesn't know Lee, by the way, Lee is he does media here, and he does webinars and lives and all sorts of magic. He helps edit videos and is just about the coolest person in the whole planet.
Oh, you're too nice to me.
And also knows a lot about pop culture. So if you want to talk about pop culture, Lee's your guy as well.
Well, we had a couple of questions that popped up before we get questions from our audience. We had a couple of questions who popped up from clients that have been reaching out through the Yard Farmer website and asking questions. So this has been sent over to us by Rachel, who is our project manager. And so
Rachel has a question.
Oh no, this is a question via Rachel from a client directly. So all right. So the first question that's come up, and this has been the biggest question that's come up over the last couple of weeks, is from people that are getting ready to do an in-person, like a planting session with you, or you're coming to the property or whatever else. But it also pertains to so many other people. Generally speaking, what's the best thing for a person to do to get their soil ready to plant?
And, fascinating.
And I know that can be real specific based off of region, but I know there's some broad strokes we can cover here.
Yeah. And I've noticed a pattern on lives where you ask me a question and then I go, well, I have 8 follow-up questions to answer your question. And I learned recently that's a neurodivergent trait of mine where I'm like, I need context in order to answer this question. Yes, so I need context, but I'll give you a couple broad categories here as if there's context. So, what I would say to prep your soil to plant, if your soil is, let's start with new build. So if you, you're doing something, you're testing out settings or something, Lee, aren't you?
Yeah, I was playing. Don't mind me.
Okay. So if you are in a new build property and you have a bunch of fill, then it's a simple but unfortunately expensive solution in which you do need to bring in topsoil to some degree. And you can bring in some organic compost, you can bring in wood mulch. That's pretty much necessary with any new build because the fill that they use to put your house on is just not fabulous. Now, if you are not in a new build, what you really do need to do is just get a soil test first, because we need to understand if there are any glaring nutrient deficiencies in your soil. And I'd also like to know what your organic matter content is. We're seeing stuff all over the map. In Utah, it's pretty common not to have a lot of organic matter. So it's pretty common to see organic matter percentage below 2%, in which case, like, we need compost, we need wood chips, we need azimite, we need humates, which is basically just like distilled organic matter, in order to get that number up towards that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, where you see really rich soil. But then I just did a project, or was looking at a soil test from a project today where it was in Utah and it was 8% organic matter.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's black gold right there. So get the soil test first. If your organic matter is below a couple of percent, then you need to get more organic matter in the soil, namely compost. And then also, if there are any super shocking nutrient deficiencies, you can address that. So like if you're just low in nitrogen, you could do like blood meal or feather meal, which is nitrogen only. If you're just low in sulfates, you could do gypsum, which is like a mineral. So you can spot treat if you have some very specific where one is way lower than the other. But in general, I'm not really in the business of like agricultural soil amending where I'm like, I need to have perfect nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, micronutrients. I more just want like a living soil structure sponge that has good, healthy qualities, because native plants are adapted to our native soils. So in that case, I'm just like, We need to get organic matter in there and get native plants with big, healthy root systems that are going to form fungal relationships. We just need to get that in for that to start working.
Now, the old hippie garden wizards that raised me, they were really big, even in Utah, of just basically taking the yard clippings, the leaves, chipping up branches from pruning, and just throwing that right into the garden. And well, in my mom's case, it was like a compost pit that she moved every year to a different part of the garden, and the soil was black. Is that a good idea, or should we hold off until we know what's going on with like a soil test?
Follow-up questions again. I mean, it just depends. I know that your mom spent a lot of her gardening time in Oregon, and in Oregon, like, you just can't keep wood stuff. You can't keep carbon as carbon. It's going to turn into dirt real fast, and you're going to have that black, loamy chocolate cake soil. In Utah, that's really hard to do. Mulch it breaks down, but it takes years. Right. And so it's more for mulches for like just keeping the soil underneath stabilized, moist, healthy, and helping suppress weeds, helping keep moisture in there. It's not really just turning it into dirt immediately. Gotcha. It's just not a thing here.
But generally, the golden rule then is get the soil test and then move from there. Okay, gotcha. All right. So the next question that's been popped in, a couple people have asked about solarization. Or solarizing their yard. And there's been a little confusion out there because some people think, oh, I'm going to use clear plastic. I'm going to use black plastic. I'm going to use a tarp. I'm going to use whatever. So let's talk about the basics of solarizing real quick.
Okay. So when you want to solarize your lawn, you want to kill your grass, or this could be for weeds too. You're basically trying to kill whatever is underneath by cooking it. And typically you see clear plastic or black plastic being used. Clear plastic is my preferred method because it doesn't kill all living life in the soil. Right. Like, it will kill root rhizomes. But there are, again, caveats. There's always nuance here. And especially if you're watching from different regions, like, don't just take everything that I say and apply it at 100%, because there's a million different caveats to all of these answers. Absolutely. So if it was just Kentucky bluegrass, for example, I would use clear plastic, because then I know that I can get down, it's only 1 or 2 inches of roots. I can get down, cook all those roots, get that Kentucky bluegrass scraped away, and there'll still be living something, bacteria, fungi, etc., in the soil beneath. Black plastic heats up so much that you are actually going to scorch and kill more of the earth. However, there are times where if we're talking Bermuda grass in Utah, if we're talking bindweed, clear plastic might not be enough. So at that point, you might need to pull out the black plastic. But again, there's all these factors, because at the point where you pull out the black plastic and you kill all the soil, then you need to amend that soil later. If you're in a rush, it might be worth paying the money just to scrape all of that dirt and weed rhizomes and take it away and put topsoil back on. But that's a much more invasive and expensive option. So it's really case by case, and it just depends on how bad the situation is, what the budget is, what the timeline is, all of those things.
So if somebody were to go the nuclear option and do the black plastic, would you recommend a soil test afterwards to see what they've left with, or is everything just dead?
I would probably test it before or after. I don't know if I'd bother doing both. You're going to have to add a lot of nutrients in at some point. I mean, it's always good to know what's going on, right? It's always good to know. At the end of the day, like, if you're overwhelmed by soil testing, or it's freaky to you, like, organic compost has all of these macronutrients in it. So you can get organic compost down on the soil, which you will need to do if you're solarizing with black plastic.
Well, folks, if you're watching on Instagram or on YouTube, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. The video itself is live on Instagram and streaming on Instagram, but we never know how long it's going to stay there. So if you are watching now and you have to leave for any reason, or if you want to know where this is going to live, it'll be in our live section on YouTube. And we also, just for convenience, edit this down considerably so that it's a little more concise and tight. And that'll be up sometime next week.
We do that.
Just for anybody who is saying, wow, these folks talk a lot. We'll take all the chit chat out and just have the hard facts for you next week. So
on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Yeah. So if you want to watch this not on vertical video on Instagram, if you want to watch this on full screen, if you want Chromecast me up to the TV, that's fine. We're on YouTube doing this exact thing as well. That's why on Instagram you're seeing it in horizontal right now.
Just teeny tiny, but it works. So another question from a client. Mulch recommendations, and again, I know this isn't specific to any one particular region, but let's just say if you had a person say, what's your best recommendation for mulch? I live in Utah.
The natural forest mulch from Biograss Farms.
Oh, that's a new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's my favorite. I wish we could just like throw pictures up on the screen. I don't know if that's possible, but it's
we will next time.
Called Natural Forest from Biograss Farms in Utah, and it's not too brown, it's not too tan, it's not too black. It's like the perfect natural variant of color, and it's, as per its name, natural forest. It's got no chemicals in it. It's like primed for all of that saprophytic fungi and microbial activity to happen, and it looks good. And it's $55 a cubic yard. Oh, look at you doing the thing and putting the thing on.
There we go. So
can we zoom on that? Yeah. So that's the natural forest mulch from Biograss. That's my favorite mulch that I use in Utah. Right? Wow. It's just like a good color. It's just a good color. So if I were to give general non-Utah mulch advice to anyone, I would say go for a natural wood mulch, bark mulch. Don't do anything that's dyed. I think it looks fake. I don't know. I don't like it. Please, if you're going to do a dyed mulch, don't do red, because that looks the fakest of all. I'll take a dark brown, I guess, but I prefer a natural screened wood mulch for aesthetics. That being said, we would be remiss if we don't talk about chip drop, because sometimes the best mulch is free mulch. And so if you really need some free mulch, you just go to chipdrop.com, and an arborist will dump a literal mountain worth of free mulch. I mean, you don't get to control how much, so you have to be prepared. But get the free mulch. Now, it will have sticks in it. It might have some pine needles in it. Like, it's not going to be screened. And so in which case, my recommendation is get the free mulch down so you get that coverage, that moisture retention, that weed suppression, and then go buy a couple cubic yards of fancy mulch as like your little half an inch to 1 inch of top dressing, rather than doing a full like 3 inches of expensive mulch.
And if you're doing chip drop, you've mentioned before that you can tell them that you don't want anything with like Siberian elm or tree of heaven.
Yeah. You can say, I think elm would probably be fine. I don't think elm would sprout from its chips. Tree of heaven isn't supposed to be able to sprout from its chips. I just am so traumatized by that tree that I'm like, I don't want it. Don't give it to me.
Come to the conclusion that tree is directly from hell, and it's going to do whatever it wants.
Yeah. No, it's a nightmare. And it's coming up in my yard right now because my neighbor cut theirs down, and now I have 8 million Tree of Heaven volunteers.
Oh my goodness.
Yard. It's so fun.
Terrible.
Yeah, but I love to put on the chip drop just in capital letters, just like no pests or diseases, because they're arborists who are dropping these trees off. So if they're taking a tree down because there's beetles or like a fungus or something, they know that. So they're not going to drop it off at your house. I feel like that should go without saying, but I still feel like it's worth just typing it out when you apply.
Yeah, and I think people always have that concern too, because we do worry about invasives showing up with that. Now, here in Salt Lake County, we actually have mulch that you can pick up at the landfill.
Cool.
Yeah, you have to bring a pickup truck, and it's like $12 for a cubic yard.
That's gorgeous. That's a lot cheaper than the Biograss Farms one, which is $55 a cubic yard.
Yeah,
probably a different look.
Probably.
But again, you can double dip. Like, you can do your like big base of a cheap mulch or a free mulch from Chip Drop, and then you can put the fancy stuff on top, and you only need to use like literally a half an inch to an inch.
Gotcha. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. I know we've got about 30 people watching on Instagram, and about 10 of you here on the YouTubes. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll be monitoring Instagram, and we'll be monitoring YouTube as well. We have a question from It's Becca on YouTube. If cost is an issue, what are your thoughts on arborist chips? I don't even know what an arborist chip is.
Like from a chip drop?
Yeah.
Or do you mean, yeah. So like a chip drop would be free chips from an arborist, for example. I think you can also, because chip drop isn't everywhere, or sometimes arborists aren't on chip drop, you can call arborists directly and then just ask for their chips, and they might charge you, but they shouldn't. They shouldn't charge you for it, to be honest, but they might. I'm a big fan of it, as long as you have that asterisk. Like, I don't want anything with pests or diseases, because you do have to think about why arborists are chopping down trees. And they're chopping down trees oftentimes because there are pests or diseases, and you don't necessarily want that in your yard.
Yeah. We see a lot of that here in Salt Lake County in particular, because a lot of the old trees are old cottonwoods. They were put in 100 years or so ago and not maintained. And so they ended up with this 120-foot tree that is dying, and limbs are falling off and crushing houses. And
it's a controversial tree for that reason. I love a cottonwood. It hosts so many important species of butterfly, like the larva of butterfly. It's such a great tree, and it's native, and it's drought tolerant, and it's big and beautiful and fast growing. But the reason it's fast growing, because it's fast growing, it's not a hardwood. And so it is much more prone to breakage. I don't love a cottonwood that's planted 10 feet away from your house.
No.
But 50 feet away from your house, I'm a big fan of a cottonwood tree.
If you ever managed to visit one of the lovelier areas in our city, the Avenues district, there's a lot of cottonwoods that are just literally pushing the sidewalks up and out of their moorings, or
they're not a street tree. They're not an approved street tree. I see some comments on Instagram.
Yeah, we'll get them from Instagram. Fellowship of the Toad Nerd
says the literal host of the Geek Show podcast.
Yeah, I'm not the host. I just hang out. Do you have any knowledge on problems with red mulberry issues? They have some growing wild in their backyard, and it has some weird growths and dying leaves.
Oh no, if it's new, you probably just need to get an arborist to come look at it. To be honest, unless you're talking about just these little volunteers, which in that case, if you don't want them, you can just lop them. But anytime you see leaves coming out of the base of a tree low down, like branches, or you see leaf drop, if you see any of that like black staining on the trunk, it's time to call an arborist and have them look at it.
A lot of people are a little hesitant to call an arborist because there is some expense involved with that. But if that tree is precious, or part of your, like an anchor in your landscape, it's money well spent.
Well, and the arborist will tell you what's up for free. It's just about the work. So it does not usually cost anything at all.
I did not know that.
Have an arborist. Yeah, they'll come over to give you the consult because they want to give you a quote for the work. So they'll give you a quote on pruning, or if you need to treat anything. But oftentimes they will be there free of charge. At least the arborist that I've had over at my house didn't charge me anything until we agreed to services.
Well, and it's the honest truth. If they can save the tree, if it just needs nutrients or if it just needs something else, then great.
No, but if you're sentimentally attached to the tree, if you really want to save the tree, I would make sure you're reaching out to a certified arborist, because a lot of times people who are just tree care professionals, who I don't mean to say just in a condescending way, but I mean, they're tree care professionals, not necessarily with all of the certifications. Their job is to chop down trees. And so you might hear from someone like that. You might get a recommendation to chop down trees, because then they make $1,500 off of you to chop down your tree. So I would definitely, if the point of the arborist call is not just some quick maintenance or pruning that branch that's over your house, I would make sure you're talking to a certified arborist who specializes in tree health and tree care.
And you don't realize how much that 80-foot tree impacts the landscape in your neighborhood until it's gone.
Oh my goodness. So while we're on the subject, and I know there are other questions, so I'm sorry, but I have been hyperfixating recently on why sycamores look so bad. Because I don't know if you'd noticed, like when you're out right now in the landscape, like so many trees are fully green and leafed out. And then the sycamores have these like light brown, sparse canopies. And I have a huge 100-foot tall sycamore in my backyard on the western side that, like, if that goes, my yard is screwed. Like,
I know the tree.
my yard is screwed. And I'm standing out there like the sycamore's dying. I'm losing my mind. I don't know what to do. How could this be happening to me? And then I noticed every other sycamore in my neighborhood looked exactly like that.
So you think it's a blight?
What's going on? I don't think it's a blight. I was Googling it, and I think that it might blight in quotes. I think when there are wet springs,
they're so wet here. Yeah.
They're prone to a fungus thing that prevents the leaves from forming. However, it seems like they will put out a flush of leaves when the weather warms up. So they'll put out a second flush. But I was truly, today even, I'm noticing like that sycamore looks like crap. That sycamore looks like crap. And it's such a majestic tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been having, I can't speak for the rest of the Intermountain West, but here in northern Utah, we've been having a very, very fickle spring. It's been just all over the place.
Sweater. It's almost June.
I'm wearing a hoodie. It's 62 degrees in the house.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, okay. Our next question from IG Harley Babe 101, also on Instagram. That's the IG part. Hi, my name's Lee. Do you have any recommendations for pollinator plants that like shade or part shade?
Pollinator plants that like shade or parts shade. Interesting. I like to give native plant recommendations, and I don't know where you're from. Silvery lupin, if you're in Utah, is a part shade sort of understory wildflower. Rocky Mountain columbine, but those are Utah recs. Creeping phlox if you're in the Midwest to East Coast.
And it's pretty.
Let me give you let's give the whole country some very broad advice. You need to look up your native woodland wildflowers. Because if we think about shade in nature, where is there shade? In the woods. So go look for like native to your local forests, your local wooded areas, and then look for like the ground covers and wildflowers that flower in that space.
How would Oregon grape do?
Amazing. Yeah. So it would be pollinator friendly for that one little like 3 weeks a year where it's flowering. The bees are all over it for that time.
But then we have little berries that the other critters get to munch on. So
Oregon grape's one of my favorite native plants, and creeping Oregon grape for shady areas as ground cover in Utah and basically anywhere west of where we are. I love that plant. It's also a controversial one because some people just don't like the look because it has that sort of holly look.
Yeah.
I personally just think of it more as a backdrop plant. It's not supposed to be the star of the show, but if you have an area in the corner of your yard where you just want coverage and you need low maintenance and you need it to be easy breezy beautiful.
Yeah, once you introduced me to it, I've been an undying, unwavering fan ever since.
At their Red Butte plant sale, they're literally in little plugs like this big, and there's one sprout on each one.
Yeah, you had a good time, I hear. My sources at Red Butte said that you had a blast.
I spent so much more money than I should have spent at the Red Butte plant sale. Like several $100s more than I said I was going to spend.
Oh, well.
Well, I was there. Yeah.
I know you're a plant fan, so we shouldn't be surprised. It'd be like if I went to a nerd store and didn't spend $1,000. There'd be some lectures there. One of the other things, I'll get back to that. We're working on, for folks who are interested, we talk a lot about native trees and indigenous trees and trees sometimes that grow well in a region if you don't have the natives. We're doing a mini documentary. It's our first on the perils of the Russian olive that we've started working on.
It's like, what are we doing, Lee?
Yeah, no.
What are we doing?
We talked about this last August, and I've actually been working on it.
It's been a year since we've talked about the Russian olive. You're like, we're doing a mini documentary, and I'm
we are. So surprise, boss. Yeah. So. We've been, there's all kinds of research going into it. And the Russian olive is a tree that if you're here in northern Utah, you see it everywhere. And we're actually going to talk about how a tree that is beneficial to wildlife and is a nitrogen fixer, and it establishes itself well in areas that are semi-arid, is an actual nuisance and destroying riparian culture and regions here. Yeah,
there are so many good things like that you just said about it, and yet you can't go anywhere without seeing 800,000 of these. I drove up to Perry, Utah for that client visit today, and they're just just hundreds on the roadside and in fields. And I've started to like have a visceral reaction to seeing them.
Yeah.
Where I should feel Mediterranean and like, oh, it's an olive silvery green color. And instead I'm just like, look at that.
Yeah, this one in particular is being categorized as a noxious weed all over the country because it literally chokes out native habitats.
Yeah,
native plants just can't grow. So, but we'll have that up later this summer, and it'll be a fun and semi-depressing.
I filmed a bunch of footage last August of me standing next to Russian olive trees going like this.
So I did the same thing.
I need to send you, like, literally I set up my phone and walked and was like, boo.
Yeah, I went for a walk. I went for a walk by Gardner Village on the Jordan River Parkway, and it's just like,
yeah,
it's like, oh, cool. This sucks because there's so many other trees that would benefit from that watershed. So kind of sad. So, folks, if you do have questions, please leave them in the comments. But let us know if you could do us a favor. Let us know where you're at because your answer is going to get better mileage if we know where you are. Otherwise, we're just going to assume you're in Utah. And
she needs context.
Yeah, we need
she
context.
Needs as much detail as possible.
Yeah, she's brilliant, but she needs a little context. So
got a touch of the tism.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Hallie003. Oh no, actually, we're going to go to Victoria Lenora on Instagram. Tell me about a plant you're all hyped about right now.
Oh,
I love this question.
Oh, shoot. I was just talking to somebody about this. Tell someone about a plant that I'm hyped about. I mean, all the plants. So now it's like choosing your favorite child among many children. False indigo is a Utah native plant that is so pretty. And I just am putting it everywhere. Oh, but you know which one is actually, no, I've got a better answer than this. Okay. Blue matte penstemon is the thing I am most hyped about. And I did not know about blue matte penstemon until I was at the Red Butte Garden Plant Sale. And I was like, what the actual F is this thing that I'm looking at right now? Because penstemon, I put in every single Utah design that I do.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. It's gorgeous. And someone's like, I like lavender. And I'm like, okay, great. We're putting in penstemon because it looks kind of like that, but it's native and drought tolerant and fabulous. And so I put penstemon everywhere. Blue matte penstemon is a creeping ground cover version of penstemon that's native to like not quite the Wasatch, but like just one little bit that. And so everybody wants creeping thyme in their yard. And I'm like, yep, we can do some creeping thyme. We'll add in some creeping phlox because creeping phlox is kind of similar to creeping thyme. The flowers are larger, but it's not really native to Utah. It's native to the Midwest, but it's the closest thing I have to a native creeping ground cover like that because creeping thyme is Mediterranean, right? So this looks like that, but is actually native to here. It's native to like Cedar City, like that area of Utah, but still that's so much closer than the Midwest. So now I'm putting blue matte penstemon everywhere. I bought like 12 plugs of it and put them in my pathways in my backyard.
Amazing. I just having looking at it and realizing, yeah, it does look a lot like the other plants you were mentioning.
And it spreads. It spreads like creeping thyme. So you could put it in between your flagstones and everything, but it's a native plant. Oh, yeah.
And we get that question sometimes. People say, well, if it's native, it's just going to be sagebrush and dry and whatever else. And no, this is actually really lush territory if you plant the right stuff. So awesome.
And also sagebrush gets a bad rap. I've seen it as a focal point in a landscape, even big sagebrush, which is that one with like the big woody trunk. I saw a yarded provo with a big sagebrush as like a focal point and like the gnarled trunk. And then it had all the pretty flowering stuff around it. It looked like $1 million because it's like that landscaper was like paying attention to the landscape and like doing something that had context and like made sense here. And the yard with the petunias in a row of mulch can't compete with that.
That's awesome. Okay, on Instagram, Hallie G003 tempted to tear up some grass and just plant natives. How important is a solid all plans decided before getting started?
I mean, you're talking to a literal landscape designer, so I'm afraid I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear because we plan everything. You might not need a full plan, but you need some basic stuff covered.
You need a strategy.
You need there you go, Lee. You might not need a complete detailed plan, but you do need a strategy. So if you're going to tear up your grass, what are you putting in its place? So, okay, grass is torn up and hauled. I want you to get some nice, like, topsoil compost blend, maybe an inch of that down. I want you to get 1 or 2 inches of wood mulch down. Honestly, 2+ would be better. But now let's think about that. If you just pull the grass out and throw topsoil and compost and wood mulch, is this wood mulch now just a huge droopy pile on top of your yard? It is. So you need to make sure that around all your sidewalks and your driveways, you're digging down like 4 inches so that by the time you add some topsoil and you add your 2 or 3 inches of wood mulch, you get that nice, like, here's the mulch, here's the sidewalk, and there's a nice crisp line, because this looks like hot garbage when that just like spills over, but this looks good. So that maybe just get a really good solid base. And then my next strategy would be pick several places to have focal points. Because if you just start throwing natives in, it might look nice, but it's nice is going to be very subjective to your neighbors. Whereas you can do a couple of things where it can still be as lush and native and wild and fabulous as you want it to be, but your neighbors will also enjoy it. And having focal points break up the textural chaos is like a critical component of that. So like on one side of your yard where it's not blocking the house, do a native flowering tree or a tree with big fall interest, like a big tooth maple in Utah, or a serviceberry for spring interest in Utah. Have that as a focal point because it raises up higher above everything else. And then over here on this side where you don't really want to block the house, but you still need a focal point, do like a big boulder. That's a nice boulder. Or do like a bird bath or a couple of fancy ornamental grasses or something, but like make it a focal point.
Right.
And then you can just start shoving stuff everywhere. But even still, I would make sure that near all your pathways, your driveway, your sidewalk, you're only planting things that are 3 to 6 inches tall. And then the stuff behind that is 8 to 12 inches tall. And then the stuff behind that is 12 to 24 inches tall. Because if you just put a 4-foot plant next to your pathway with your wood mulch spilling over, and now the plant is flopping into the pathway, it's a nightmare.
It is.
A nightmare.
A couple of things we'll cover really quick. We do have plans for some small designs that'll be available on the yardfarmer.co website. Templates that will be just basically plug and play. You can pick up the template.
The website that is up.
The website that I was just about to tell you.
Not down.
Yeah, it is not down any longer.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had plans of launching that in the early spring, but it turns out again, we are a full-time design firm and things went cuckoo bananas.
Yes. And we had to do our jobs for our clients instead of making
But man, we'll have those templates up sometime soon, hopefully in the next year. And that'll be a good thing. And another thing that is really great is you really want to see what grows well. Go for some walks in your neighborhood, and you guarantee you're going to find a yard. We have a couple in our neighborhood that we just stop and go, ooh, because they're planting natives. They're densely planted. You can tell that they're not doing any weeding and hardly any watering at all, and it just looks gorgeous. And so, go look at the rest and steal from the best. So,
be a thief. Copy
stuff
paste
out there.
I do it all the time. I mean, is anything truly original? If I'm walking by and I see this like amazing idea, and I'm just like, clocking that. Clocking that.
Absolutely. Rachel Peterson on Instagram. Any recommendations on where to find Utah native plants? She feels like every website she looks at says something different, and that's true.
Yes. So where to find like what plants are native? So the best database you're going to have is to go to the Conservation Garden Parks website and then check native. There's a checkbox that says native. So check that. There's also a checkbox that says nativar, which is a cultivar of a native. So for example, we have native elderberries here, but the black lace elderberry was made up in a lab. There's still plenty of beneficial things about it because it's similar to an elderberry, but it's not the OG native one that evolved through time and rather scientists' efforts. So with that database, you can't select both at the same time. So you need to like look for your natives, then uncheck that, and then look for your nativars, and then uncheck that. But you'll be able to get a good list there. Now, if you're looking for sources of where to buy native plants in Utah, you got to go to Cache Valley Native Plants. They now are placing online orders, and they're doing specific Salt Lake County drop-off days. So like if you live in Salt Lake County and you don't want to go up to Cache Valley, which I mean, hey, who doesn't love a scenic drive? But if you don't want to go up to Cache Valley, then you need to just talk to them directly about when you place your order online that they're going to bring it to one of their drop-offs. They're basically like CSA style, farmers market style, where they have planned meetups and they drop off the native plants to you. Yeah, it's awesome. She dropped off a bunch of plants for my client at my house, VIP service, the other day. Wow. And we talked about her market days.
That's pretty amazing. Cool. If you're not familiar with the West Jordan Conservation Water Park, you definitely want to check it out. One of the things, they have some great free classes that are available online. My wife and I went there a year ago, and one of their docents basically just followed us around for an hour talking about everything. And there's an area of the park that I love where they have taken plants that are ideal for park strips, and they've just planted them out in squares so that you could go once a month and just see how it looks during the different times of the growing season, which is an invaluable service, right? So, here's how it looks in the spring. Here's how it looks in August. And
it's more than a botanical garden. It is a botanical garden, but it's like a demonstration garden because there's literally a section where they just have all the drought tolerant lawn alternatives, and you can just go walk on them and lay on them and touch them. And it's like, it's really just meant for science, just so that you can see how things look and feel.
Yeah.
You need to go. If you aren't there right now, honestly, I'm upset for you.
I'm a huge fan. I think it's great. On Instagram, Resting on My Laurel, by the way, fantastic name.
Excellent name.
I live in the plains of Colorado in general. Are the suggestions you make for specific plants and water management applicable?
Yeah, it's like almost 1-to-1. I mean, you're on the plains side. So the cool thing about that is that you can look up Great Plains native plants. You actually have a wider range. There's actually more stuff that's popular and commercially available to you that's native on that plains side. But if you're like towards the Front Range at all, like Intermountain West, the stuff that's native here is the stuff that's native there, because borders are kind of made up. So, I mean, they're very made up. Yeah. So, yeah. What was the question specifically? Was it about anything specific?
Just whether or not those specific plants and water management.
The water management, absolutely, because it's also a semi-arid climate. Yeah.
Yeah, really, like the only real big difference is how storms hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're dealing with stuff that's coming down through the Canadian Rockies, sliding on down those mountains.
You'd just be making different. I mean, no matter where you live, even in Utah, you're going to make different decisions based on how much rain you get. Like typically in Salt Lake, we get 22 inches of rain a year, which is kind of a lot. But in I had a client who lived on the east bench of Bountiful, like almost like there's nowhere else to go once you get up there. And we looked at his weather station data, and he gets 33 inches of rain.
Wow.
And I'm like, it's a 30-minute drive from where I am right now, and it's a 10-inch difference in rain. So I would pay more attention to your specific climate data than like big, broad generalizations.
Yeah, because I mean, we even look at the difference between here and Grantsville, which is 40 miles to the west, night and day when it comes to precipitation, because the storms that come in off the Great Salt Lake hit us don't even touch Grantsville. So it can be pretty
and in
hairy.
Salt Lake, we're literally on the line of ecoregions. Like if you look at the EPA's list of ecoregions, there's the Northwestern Forested Mountains ecoregion, which is Park City. It is Heber. And then there's the Northwestern Deserts, or North American Cold Deserts ecoregion. And if you are in Salt Lake, you are spliced.
Yeah, we're literally sandwiched between desert and the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. So I pay attention to both ecoregions. Like when I'm looking up native plants in Salt Lake, I have Northwestern Forested Mountain native plants up. I have cold desert plants up. And then I'm making decisions based on the microclimate of that. Because even if you're in Salt Lake, if you have full shade and Mill Creek is running through your backyard, you're probably going to, plants that are like woodland and mountainous are going to do a lot better than if you're in Ogden on a new build with full sun, full exposure. Like those are completely different things. So I would look at the microclimate to make those decisions.
Mersek asks if there are native flower seed mixtures for here in Utah.
Oh, there sure is.
We made some.
If you, we have some. Not anymore. They're all gone.
Yeah.
But um, Great Basin seed. But then if you can get out to Red Butte Gardens, they sell a native plant mix in the fall that they collect from all of their plants that year.
Oh, cool.
$3.99 for a packet of them. And I have several of them in my fridge because you're supposed to stratify them and put them in the fridge over the winter that I still need to go and shake out in my yard. So that's my favorite one because it's just such a great mix. And it's literally hand harvested by the employees at Red Butte Garden, which is pretty cool. But Great Basin Seed has a bunch. High Country Gardens has a bunch. There's so many options.
That's awesome. I didn't know that about the Red Butte flowers. That's and that's also from the question we had earlier about native plants. Is if you go to their spring plant sale, they have some native plants. In
3 rows, and it has a big sign that says native, which is awesome because you know exactly where to go.
And they know what they're doing there. So their native plant garden is one of my favorite areas of the whole thing. Pep0216, can you give Las Vegas region desert plant recommendations?
Absolutely. Deergrass for like getting some softness in there. There are several penstemons that are native, and then you obviously can go into the like succulent and cacti, like Perry's agave, century plant, that stuff as well. Okay, hold on. I'm starting over. I'm going to go full holistic for you.
Okay.
Vegas. Right. 2 most important things. If I'm landscaping a Vegas yard, I want to figure out how I'm bringing shade into the yard, and I want to figure out how I'm using rainwater to improve the plant life because you're in Vegas and you have no water. So, downspouts need to get piped to rainwater harvesting basins. That's where like everything's just a little bit lower in that area. So put a downspout extension, get that trenched over, get that to a pop-up drain so that it's filling an area. And then that gets planted with all of your native grasses and perennials. So like deergrass is one. I don't have a bunch of flowering perennials just sitting in my brain right now, but look up Las Vegas native flowering perennials, Las Vegas native grasses. That goes in the basin. Then next to the basin, you can do some trees, you can do some shrubs, you can do your succulents, your sedums, cacti, agave, all of that. But that's the stuff that's not sitting in the basin. And so get some mesquite trees in, like get some native trees to get shade to cool the collective temperature down, because then the landscape needs less water. And then the rainwater is helping those native plants survive. And now we're talking like a 60, 70, 80% reduction in water needs for your yard.
And mulch, not rock.
No rock. Yeah. No rock.
Yeah, because everybody hears us talking about permaculture, landscaping design, and they're like, oh, so we'll put in a bunch of rocks and plants, and those rocks are going to bake your plants.
Yep.
They're going to make your house hotter.
And lately, I've just been thinking about the debris. Like, do you know what the great thing is about mulch? If your mulch is looking a little sad, or there's some weeds in it, or there's like leaves that fell on it, you could just go shake out a couple more bags of mulch on top, and now it looks good again. Yeah. When there's little leaf debris sitting in your gravel, what are you going to... There's nothing you can do except just pick it out.
Yeah.
Try to leaf blow it out, but it's stuck in there.
Nope. That's not fun.
Nope.
I've declared war on gravel. We inherited a gravel driveway, and it's my least favorite part of our property because it's just like, let's weed all year long, no matter what. Ailey wants to know if you can plant perennials in Utah during July or August, or if you have drip irrigation, can you do that, or should you just wait until fall?
You can. And it depends if it's, again, here I am with my, it depends. If we had a July like last July, yeah, it was like 75 degrees on the 4th of July last year.
And so 100 degrees 10 days later.
Yeah, but you can. I mean, right, you need to baby those plants. You need to make sure they're getting plenty of water, and whatever amount of water you're thinking they need, just double that in your head. Fall is better. Fall is my favorite time to plant perennials because they just kind of relax and then they go dormant, and then they have all of early spring to start breaking dormancy with absolutely no water stress at all. So, I mean, if you really need plants in the ground, like if you just have a big open pit of exposed soil that just needs plants, I'd say go for it, but just know that you need to really baby them.
And there's some risk involved because of the time of year. Yeah, for sure. Emily Dawn wants to know where you can buy Oregon grape plants in Utah now that the Red Butte sale is over.
Yes. Twin Pines Nursery has some. I think Deseret Perennial has some. Mill Creek probably has it, to be honest. I know Cache Valley Native Plants has it. And that's a small business, like a local small business. So that one, if you're going to support any of them, and then see if you can get their Salt Lake drop off.
Nice. Yeah, that's again, we're going to be singing the gospel of the Oregon grape here. So, Huge Ass Homestead, how do I effectively get a Russian olive tree off of my property for good?
Okay, so
they are root growers.
You're gonna chap it.
Yeah.
You're gonna drill a big hole in it, and you're gonna put in a 20% concentration of glyphosate directly into that hole. That's the only way.
Yep.
It's the only way. And what's good about the glyphosate is that it doesn't have soil activity, so it's going to go into the roots and it's going to do what it does, and it's not going to cause like mass ecological harm. What you don't ever want to do, and what I never ever recommend doing, is spraying glyphosate anywhere. But a high concentration applied directly to like a hole drilled or a cut stump, that's the only way to deal with some of those invasives.
Yeah, I was watching some videos from the state of Arkansas where they're declaring war against the Russian olive. And these guys are doing that. The other thing they're trying to do, if they're a big enough tree, is dig down far enough that they can get chains around the root system and just yank them out of the ground with bulldozers.
Yeah.
And it's like once they're in, they're in. So you have to eradicate them with severe prejudice.
Yeah. Yeah, like just total aggression. And it's also good to do it in late summer, early fall, or even just like mid-fall. It's great to do it before it goes dormant while it's still alive, but then it's going to go dormant and it's not going to be able to like fight. Yeah. And it's not going to have the leaves to photosynthesize and like stay strong. And so then in that early springtime when it's trying to wake up, but it doesn't have leaves yet, that's the best time to.
It's like smothering it in its sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're playing dirty. For sure.
And another thing, I just watched this about the glyphosates in particular, is that trees, the fibers on trees, start to close off to protect themselves within 15 minutes of being cut. So be prepared to get that herbicide on there like as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So
I follow Native Habitat Project. I'm sure most of the people who are watching this, if they follow me, they also follow Native Habitat Project. And I don't know how he's getting this cutting edge tech, but he and some people there have these it's like a herbicide drill gun, and they're like walking, and then it just like goes straight in, and
no chance of overspray.
Super cool.
Yeah,
I was like, you have my attention with whatever is happening.
Sounds amazing.
Right, yeah, but I would essentially immediately cut, power drill in goes at the same exact time. Yeah.
From YouTube, Carly Lauren, a question on ideas on a vining, preferably flowering plant that will thrive in shade, low sun, that handles very wet soil. That area can have standing water in Zone 7, Central Oklahoma.
Ooh,
very specific question. Thank you.
But I know the answer. It's Virgin Spower.
Virgin Spower.
Okay. Bower. Bower. Virgin's Bower. It's a clematis. It's a woodland plant, so it should be able to handle wet soil. However, if it's really wet, like you have standing water, you might want to just figure out what that's about. Like if we can redirect some water, if we can help with drainage, if we can, anything like that. Yep.
Okay. That's very pretty. That's very pretty.
Shade tolerant.
Who doesn't love a clematis?
Yep.
All right. So what can somebody do if they have standing water like that? I mean, we've talked about this before, but
they need to do a perk test, and they need to figure out how fast their soil drains. Does it drain half an inch an hour? Does it drain 1 inch an hour? Does it drain 0 inches an hour? Any of those things. Is it
overflowing after an hour?
Yeah, really. And if it drains really, really slow, then and I have a real life client example of this. If your soil drains not at all, which is something I experienced for the first time with a client this week or the week before, the goal is to get the water off the property. Unfortunately, which is like the opposite of what my normal job is.
Yeah, especially here.
Yes. But we had a client who literally, I don't know how, it's a new build and it's out in the Wild West in a rural place, and the client was not even, the builder was not even required to present civil engineering documents to the city. Wow. And it's a literal wetland, and we did a perk test and it was 0 inches per hour. it stayed the same. And we tried it 3 times. So we actually are like now on the phone with the city, and we're like, we're literally going to tie our drainage directly into the municipal sewer system, just fully tie it into municipal and just get it off as quickly as possible, because there's just it's a wetland, and you can literally see it from GIS. You can see like, I see the water coming from there and from there and from there, and everything is brown except this one spot that is bright green because it's
they have a verdant swamp in Utah.
Yeah. So if your soil drains 0 inches an hour, you need to get it away from the important stuff. If your soil drains 2 inches an hour, then that's fine. Like, we can make that work. If you have places with standing water, we just need to think about like, why is it standing there? Usually it's the lowest point in the landscape, and there's 4 or 5 or 6 different places where water is running off. And you can usually tell just by like staring at the dirt and looking at like erosion patterns, or just look at downspouts and be like, that gravity would indicate that it's going to go from there to there. And then you can slow the water down from those sources to that low point by just like berm, swale, berm, swale, berm, swale, fill it up with a bunch of native plants that are going to get watered by that water. You know, that kind
happy
of
plants in a pretty yard. Yeah. That's the next step, right?
Yeah.
So, Brady, let's fix that. Does a biodiverse sod exist in Utah?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, biodiverse. There are native sods, which is cool. Oh gosh, you're gonna have me ungatekeeping the one thing that I gatekeep.
Uh-oh.
You know that I'm not a gatekeeper, Lee.
No, you're not. You hate it. You hate
it's the antithesis of my. It's against my values to gatekeep it. The thing is, I'm like, if I sell my clients out of this, and like I put it in my designs and I tell my clients to buy it, and then if my clients can't buy it because they sell out, then I'm screwed, right? It's bio-native from Biograss Farms, and it is a native sod that is great. And if they ever sell out, I will lose my mind, because I install it in so many yards, and I need my clients to have access to that sod.
So you know what it is, Brady. Please don't buy all of it. We need some.
We need some.
We need some.
Help!
For all that's holy, we need some of that grass. From YouTube, it's Becca. Question: what do you consider a good percentage of native versus state-friendly plants in a landscape? Becca 80%. Is in Central Florida.
80% native to 20% non-native is the recommended amount to still have peak biodiversity in your yard. So, and if you think about things that are just like bluegrass, not native, and that's going to count towards that percentage. So
gotcha.
I generally try to pick a native option literally whenever possible, except when there's truly no functional way to do something else.
Gotcha. So if you have a couple forsythia in your Utah yard, that's fine. Yep. Just make sure that the rest of it's fairly native. So.
Oh yeah, and I'm not like you have to rip out every lilac and every forsythia and every whatever. No, like if it's mature and it's healthy and it's doing well, you don't have to rip it out, as long as it's not invasive.
My lilac's 17 feet tall and would probably murder me if I tried. So
I'm never gonna be a person that's like, you have to rip out mature shrubbery and plants just because, unless it's an invasive thing. If I see a Russian olive, I'm gonna be mad if that stays. If I see English ivy, I'm gonna be mad if that stays.
Let's get something in there that's supposed to be there. Yeah.
But if it's a lilac, you can have a lilac. That's delightful. Yeah. You know? I just wouldn't plant one new. I would plant like a viburnum that's native that still gives you the kind of vibes of a lilac.
Right. Yeah, we chalk those up to lessons learned. You know, the lilac is something that went in before we knew better. So from YouTube, Jen H, she's in Northeast Pennsylvania looking for native plants. All the websites that she's visited don't have photos of all the plants. Are there any site or book recommendations?
It might honestly be good just to go to Garden for Wildlife for Pennsylvania, because it's a literal e-commerce website. So there's images everywhere. And Garden for Wildlife is a partner organization to the National Wildlife Federation. So that's how you become a certified wildlife habitat, is through the NWF. So they're legit. And you can literally type in your zip code and it will tell you what they'll sell you. Of course, it would be great to support them and purchase from them. They'll be young plants in little plugs that get mailed to you, but they're small because they need to go in the mail.
Right.
But you could also find those same plants probably at a nursery in like a 5-gallon pot.
And if you don't find it there, there's a really good website created by the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. And they actually go outside of the South. I was surprised. I thought they'd only do the South, but they do most of North America. And it's been a really good service for me to be able to track down, oh, okay, we've got something in central Colorado, and there it is, right there. There's your native plants. So, but Garden for Wildlife's awesome. We've had some good experiences with them.
That's the on the Lady Bird Johnson thing. It's the Mr. Smarty Plants page, right? It's like Reddit, but for native plants.
Yeah, you just plug in what you're looking for, and it'll show you everything you need to know, and cultivars, and that's where I learned about, because I have a giant chokecherry tree in my yard, and I was worried that it might be poisonous, and they're like, oh, no, that's an incredibly beneficial tree, and that for some reason native horses know where every chokecherry tree in the wild is, because they know there's water by it, they know that there's, so cool stuff. I get excited by this kind of stuff. So, Fellowship of the Toad, what ground covers are native to Kentucky? Their yard is pretty wild, but it's ticking off the neighbors. They like to fill it with something tidier than what they've got going on.
Kentucky. Is frog fruit native to Kentucky?
I love it when you get excited about frog fruit, because I just love the name.
Yeah. Frog fruit is native to Kentucky. So that's probably the best non-grass ground cover. And then you could probably look up some native clovers. I'm trying to think if there are, like, creeping red fescue and chewing fescue are those fine fescue grasses that are no-mow grasses. They're native to a lot of the U.S. Kentucky. Let's see. I'm just Googling during the live. No, just don't mind me.
No problems there. No
problems. Don't mind me.
Didn't you just do a consult in Kentucky, or was that Tennessee last year?
Tennessee.
That was Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not quite there.
Yeah. But frog fruit is native, so that's a good one. Wild strawberry, we use that all the time. In Utah, we do alpine strawberry, but wild strawberry is native to everywhere. Common blue violet. If you have full shade, wild ginger is like a go-to of mine, but that's just for your full shade areas. And you can mosaic these based on the individual microclimates. Like you could do frog fruit in full sun and then have wild ginger take over in your full shade areas.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never heard of wild ginger. It sounds kind of amazing.
Pennsylvania sedge. So that's a native sedge. Important to know, though, is that sedge is like a wetland or woodland plant. So that's not going to be something you plant in full sun with nothing else. Yeah. So but frog fruit is drought tolerant in full sun.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I like it. That is pretty neat stuff. You mentioned it before, but we didn't pull a picture up because I think you had recommended it for somebody in Florida.
Yeah, it's native to a lot of the Southeast and South. Yeah.
Huge Ass Homestead, again, my favorite name of the night. Any recommendations for a climbing plant that would be low maintenance, native to Davis County, Utah, and does well with mostly sunny climate and children?
Climbing plant low maintenance is probably trumpet vine, to be honest. It is not native specifically, but my hummingbirds are all over it. So, yes. I mean, if the hummingbirds are all over it, I'm not super mad. It's so easy to grow. One might call it aggressive. So I'd make sure you have a lot of space. Our native vine that we have here is called Western White Clematis. The only person I know to sell it is Cache Valley Native Plants. That would do better with at least Western shade. Clematis it's like supposed to be in the woods. So again, right. If you have full sun, full exposure, no protection at all, it's probably not going to do as well. But if you had like a big shade tree on the west side, it would probably do fine.
Cool.
But trumpet vine would be easier to grow.
Yeah, we had a trumpet vine growing in our neighborhood that would take over a telephone pole every year. I mean, we're talking 25-foot high pole, and it would just overgrow the whole thing. Yeah.
Our neighbors, I don't have one actually. I was saying I do, but it's our neighbor's trumpet vine, but it's like basically forming a tunnel over our fence to our shed. And now we walk under a trumpet vine tunnel.
Wow.
I didn't even plant it in my yard. So, yeah.
But you get to reap the benefits of it. Hallie G003, they have railroad ties acting as a low retaining wall. They are rotting, but pulling them up as allowed erosion control to occur, so the land slopes down to an alley. Is there a good ground cover they could plant there? They're in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. So you're in Texas. Native grasses and erosion control are best friends. So if you need it to be low growing, we have buffalo grass as a native grass option. However, root systems for ornamental grasses, tall grasses, like tall grass, prairie grasses. In Texas, you have the big five. So big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass. That was four. What was the other one? Blue grandma grass. Okay. Those are your prairie grasses that are native. And if you could just make your slope a prairie, that would be absolutely phenomenal. You could go to Native American seed because they have like upland, lowland, blackland. They have all the Texas microclimates as seed mixes, and you could get those overseeded. Now, if you needed something like real fast to stabilize the soil, you could get an erosion control mat down. You could do the biodegradable ones that are made out of jute, and then you could overseed your prairie on top of that. So that would like give you immediate stabilization, and then the prairie grass would grow in later. If you want something a little fancier, they have things called dirt lockers that are basically like terraced little retaining wall things that gets laid on, and it's like these little loop-de scoops that stick out from the hill, and then you plant stuff in them. I don't recommend dirt lockers ubiquitously because at the end of the day, a native grass would do everything for erosion control that a dirt locker would do. But if you really are into the aesthetic look of a dirt locker, that's an option as well.
Gotcha. Well, folks, we're an hour in. We're going to go a little bit longer here, but if you do have questions, make sure to drop it. Make sure to leave the comment with what region you're asking your question from so that we can give you the most specific answer possible. And if you're watching on Instagram and you're wondering how long this is going to stay on Instagram, we really honestly don't know. So
I think does it post?
It
I don't know if it posts from StreamYard,
right.
Because we're streaming from this other thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So your best bet if you have missed any portion of this and you're tuning in late is just check us out on our YouTube channel. It is YardFarmer.co, and drop us a subscribe and watch. We'll also have a trimmed down version of this full live video next week, which will probably be about a half hour shorter. That's just going to bring up the points and answer those questions concisely. Rachel Peterson, how do you get started as a landscape designer? It's a perennial question. We get this just every time we go live.
I did a permaculture design certification as my primary certification, my sort of first foray into this. I did it through Oregon State University, and it's an online course. It took about 6 months. It was really hard. I cried several times. But and that's just because of the sheer amount of work, because you have a big project due every 2 weeks. And if you're working full time at the same time, it was a lot of work. But totally worth it. Learned a ton. At that point, you could apply to sustainable design studios like mine to work. I wish there were more of us doing what we're doing, but we're a team of 7 now. So this is growing, this is real. So the jobs are out there and will continue to be out there until you're ready to start your own thing. And I started my own thing because I'm crazy, really fast.
Yeah. Thanks for being crazy, boss.
Yeah. Thanks. But I do want to, I want to preface, I would not have been able to do YardFarmer as an entity if we hadn't found Kyra, because Kyra's our lead designer, and she has a bachelor's in architecture, or landscape architecture, and a master's in sustainable design. And the visualization that she can do and the CAD work that she can do was so beyond my skill level. And Kyra, I was very self-deprecating at that at first. Kyra has since assured me that no, I have a designer brain, and all of the design decisions, I'm making them with the client, and I feel very confident in my design skills. But I wouldn't be able to launch a design studio if I hadn't found a landscape architect to partner with to launch a design studio. So a permaculture design certification, I think, would get you qualified to do consulting, but it's not going to teach you the artistry skills to visualize your designs on paper. That's something I learned later, and Kyra came to the table already knowing. And we were a great pair because she had no sustainable permaculture training, whereas I had no CAD engineering training and drafting training. And so we were a really great team in that respect.
It is so much fun. I have some videos that I haven't released to our YouTube channel yet of you and Kyra brainstorming together, and it's just like watching raw creativity explode all over the place.
Love it.
So
I get high off it. It's so great. Our brains work backwards from each other. She's a sequential thinker. She does 1 + 2 + 3 = 4. And I look at something and I go 4. And then I don't know how to get there. And so it's amazing when we collaborate. Because
collaboration doesn't care how you think. It just matters how you communicate. So whereas I think 1, 2, 3 squirrel.
It is fun though. We always meet in the middle. Like I'm over here and she's over here and we meet in the middle.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. So we're going to release some of those videos over the summer because we had a consult in North Carolina that just watching the look on our client's face while the two of you were just bouncing ideas off of each other, and she's getting so excited because it's like, my yard's going to look like that? Oh my gosh. So,
it looks pretty good if I do say so myself.
Yeah. Touche in Idaho wants to know what some pretty deciduous trees for the southeast Idaho area. Not a fan of evergreens.
Good. I mean, I like an evergreen too, but only on the north side or the east side of your property because I want that winter sun on your property. Idaho, cottonwoods. We've already talked about that earlier. It's a controversial choice, and yet I love them. Hackberry, common hackberry is a really great, like, I think it's 50+ foot tall, fast growing shade tree. What's the other one? Honey locust is technically, or any locust really, technically, I think the native range kind of stops around the plains of Colorado. However, it's native adjacent. Those are the three. That's next door. Those are the three I use for big deciduous shade most often in the Intermountain West. On the smaller side, the big tooth maple or Rocky Mountain maple is a go-to. If you have the right water conditions, I love an aspen. I really do, but I'm not planting that at valley elevations in full sun. I'm planting that in a different microclimate for sure.
And I happen to know Touche. She's in Chubbuck, Idaho, so I don't think that aspen's going to do well in Chubbuck.
Okay.
So,
no.
Yeah.
So, but cottonwood would do great, and a hackberry would for sure do great. That's more drought tolerant than a cottonwood even.
Yeah. Okay, the Paradise Life. What can I grow in southern Arizona? You were just in southern Arizona not too long ago, weren't you?
So many things. You can grow so many things. I'm going to pull my list real quick because I have deer grass that pops in my head as your native grass. And then all of a sudden everything goes away. Mexican oregano, if you want to grow food.
Ooh.
I've got spreadsheets. Yeah, so we got the penstemon, like I said, for the flowering plants. I'm going to do flowering perennials first. So scarlet globe mallow or apricot mallow, that's also Utah native as well. It's a really beautiful peachy color. And then we've got the penstemons. The one that is native to Tucson area is canyon penstemon. And we can, of course, talk about cacti. I mean, you've got cholla cacti, you've got century plant, you've got Perry's agave, you've got all the succulents and things. But if we're going to stick to flowering perennials, what is this one? Arizona passion vine would be super sick. Autumn false tansy aster, that's like a fleabane daisy, like a little purple daisy. Ooh, you have a larkspur? Sorry, I'm like looking at my spreadsheets and talking to you at the same time. Bare stem larkspur would be great. That's scarlet globe mallow that Lee is showing you.
Yeah, and this is the Ladybird Johnson page that I was talking about earlier. Just great database for plants. So,
and then here's the one that I like is I don't know how to share my screen, but I'll throw this in my chat. The Arizona National Plant Society plant list, because there's images of everything. Butterfly milkweed, canyon penstemon, monkey flower, California sage. I mean, you've got so much. And that's why when I see in Arizona, when it's just rocks and like a barrel cactus, I'm like, you've got such a wealth of things. You just need to get rainwater there. So you can check out Watershed Management Group in Tucson, Arizona for more rainwater harvesting resources that are local to you. But you need to all of your roof's rainwater needs to go to native plants.
Because Arizona is the driest climate in the country.
It needs to go. So you need to sink it into a basin with lots of mulch in it. And all of those plants need to be at the bottom of the basin. This is not something where like water should just be flowing past it and running off.
Yeah. So yeah, passive rainwater collection is a big deal there. I mean, we're the second driest state in the country, and we're literally twice as much moisture in a year. So Arizona fights for every drop they've got, and Phoenix is trying to take all of it.
And there's amazing demonstration gardens. Like you could go to watershed management groups living lab in Tucson, that those plantings are surviving off of zero supplemental irrigation, only rainwater. And the thing about desert native plants is that they're adapted to desert rainfall periods where they break dormancy and put out a big flush of water when it rains. And then if it gets too dry and too hot, they just go dormant and they get a little crispy. And then it rains again and they put out a big flush of growth. They're not actually dying when it's dry. So you can have a really nice ecological landscape in Arizona with no supplemental irrigation as long as you are sending your rain efficiently to those plants.
Gotcha. Sorry, folks, if I'm a little hard to hear right now, I'm trying to get into my microphone settings to turn them up, but bear with me. I'll make it as quick as possible.
Did they say you're hard to hear? Because I can hear you great.
I got a message from the wife, and I always listen to the wife.
Okay.
So
because I remember your microphone was weird last time too, but I could still hear you great.
Yeah, it's probably StreamYard, so the recording will come out fine. I'll get that taken care of as we're taking care of the next question. Modesenzo is hoping to find a good lawn yard option in Zone 5B, which is Colorado at about 6,500 foot elevation, and how best to transition the grass.
Full sun, buffalo grass. You could do sun dancer at that elevation. That would be fine. It just needs to be full sun. If you don't have full sun, let's think buffalo. I mean, when you say lawn alternative, does it need to be grass-like? Because at that point, I would probably just be going right to fine fescue from buffalo grass if you have part shade. But you got full sun, just do sun dancer buffalo grass. That would be the best one.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, buffalo grass is pretty ubiquitous. We talk about it quite a bit. So we'll probably end up doing a YardFarmer 101 video just on buffalo grass and why it's important. So,
but it can't. But it's not for the East Coast people, and it's not for the Pacific Northwest people. This is Great Plains and Intermountain West region that buffalo grass is.
It's for us dried up sponge people.
Yeah. It's for the middle dry part, Montana to Mexico, all the way up and down.
Amaceto wants to know if you have any suggestions on getting rid of quake grass that's taking over grass in a plant bed in Murray, Utah.
All right.
Is that quack grass?
The actual, yeah. So I keep coming back with it depends because there's so many different ways to do it. For the actual bed that it's coming up to, I would just do a sheet mulch. So like get around the base of the flowers that you want to be there. I would just apply a thick layer of cardboard and then a bunch more wood chips on top just to smother the grass that's trying to come up into the new beds. But then for actually getting rid of the invasives elsewhere, you might want to solarize them if you have full sun, which is the clear or black plastic thing. I'm not sure if you were tuned in earlier when we were talking about that, or try to smother it again. So like sheet mulching that. At the end of the day, like invasive grasses are really hard to get rid of without either scraping or spraying. And so the ecological option without spraying, because I really don't want to spray, is to scrape, where you're basically just saying all this dirt's bad, all dirt go, and then you bring new dirt in. So if that's not possible, you're probably going to have to be pretty aggressive with just like a annual layering of sheet mulch in order to prevent it from coming up and photosynthesizing.
Yeah, that can be a bit of a struggle, can't it?
Yeah.
From YouTube, Carly Lauren has a second question. They've made a native rain garden and have a berm sits on a slope. The yard is clover. Is it best to seed with clover on the berm, or is there a better idea they prefer seeds over plants?
I think clover would work, but I might say for a berm to go for something, if you're okay with it being taller, to just go for something with deeper root system, because clover it's just a itty bitty root system, so you're not going to get it locking up the whole berm. I plant trees and shrubs and grasses and all sorts of things on berms because you want that berm to be totally locked up and stabilized on a slope.
Gotcha. So we talk about intermixing Euro with clover. Is that something you'd recommend on a berm too, or?
Yes, but for a lawn, you would be using a clover yarrow mix and mowing it. But when you're mowing that yarrow to stay this small, the root system is correlated. So you're still not going to get that intense root system. If you let the yarrow grow up to 3 feet tall, then you're going to have an intense, complicated root system down there. Yeah. So it just depends on aesthetics. If you really need it to stay low growing, I think clover or clover yarrow is fine, but you're not going to get erosion control to the fullest degree as if you were to just let something tall grow.
So if it's me, I'm throwing yarrow in there because I'm a yarrow nut and I love it. And it's the best plant in the world.
But you just let it grow up tall.
Yeah.
And that would do it. But
so if I've got a 3-foot plant, I've got a 3-foot root.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of. I mean, that's generally how it goes. That's why when I see people mowing lawns within an inch of their life, literally, where the lawn is this short, and then I see sun scald all over the lawn, I'm like, the lawn literally can't uptake water because the roots are so small.
They're just so tiny. Yeah.
So the best thing you could do, like literally the easiest, cheapest thing anyone could do to make their lawn more drought tolerant is just raise the setting on their mower like 3 settings and just commit to a slightly longer lawn. Immediate increase in resiliency.
And it looks pretty in the wind.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. People really want it to just resemble a carpet for some reason. I don't get it, but whatever. But to answer the berm question, I mean, I've done gradual slopes where it's literally the berm full of native grasses and then a fruit tree, and then a berm full of native grasses and then a fruit tree, because you can plant trees and shrubs and woody things on the berm. You don't want to plant them in the swale because they'll rot. But on the berm, the roots are, you kind of see in the visual, the roots are still in the swale there.
Have you seen the videos of the berms they're putting in the Sahara?
Mm-hmm. Oh, the smiles, the earth smiles.
Oh, they're so amazing. So
it's passive harvesting, baby.
Yeah,
that's literally the concept. That's the concept.
Keep the most destructive desert on the planet in check with berms and swales. It's amazing.
So make the water pool so that even in the most compacted and inhospitable of soils, if the water can't keep going, it has to infiltrate at some point.
And then things grow.
And then things grow.
That's amazing. Oshawa Giraffe 10. What could they do for a side yard with full shade from a house in Pine Tree in Sandy, Utah? And I have a feeling I know where we're going.
What do you think I'm going to say?
I think you're going to talk about Oregon grape.
And,
oh, geez, now you got me.
Not the plant. The thing that I put around the Oregon grape under a pine tree.
Oh, the pine mulch.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
A+ for Lee.
I get 10 points.
Okay, so you have a pine tree, right? And so then what I see all the time is that somebody has a pine tree and then they have gravel underneath. And then they're like, I hate this pine tree because the pine needles are falling on the gravel. I'm going to cut down the pine tree. And I'm like, the problem is not the pine tree.
It's the gravel.
The problem is the gravel.
Yeah.
Right? Because pine straw mulch exists. And pine straw mulch looks like pine needles. And then the pine needles fall on that. Nothing. You can't see nothing. So the go-to for a side yard with full shade and a pine tree over it, you put in your pathway that you want to walk on. It would be great if it was something that could easily be swept, because if it was like a gravel pathway or a loose flagstone pathway, it's harder to get those pine needles off the pathway. But if it was something like a closely set paver, that would be really easy to just sweep the pine needles to the side. Then you do some creeping Oregon grape, which is a shade tolerant native plant. That's literal native ecosystem is a pine forest.
Right.
So that's the relationship it wants to have. And then you put some pine straw mulch around the outside of those plants so that you can just sweep the pine needles to the side and not deal with it anymore.
And it's just going to be so pretty, and you're going to love it. And
if you really are feeling fancy, just feeling so fancy, just like a little boulder. A little boulder over here, a little boulder over there, creeping Oregon grape around the boulder. Pine straw mulch is the base. Done.
One of the things that I love when we start talking about Oregon grape earlier in the spring is that it's a semi-evergreen plant. So you're going to have greenery around your evergreen pine tree, and it's just going to look good all year round. And it's amazing. So from YouTube, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, get to the next question here. Web Jess, is there a general rule for the amount of different types of flowers we should plant in one flower bed? I think it's going to depend on how big that flower bed is, for one thing. Loves all native plants, but don't want it to look too haphazard.
Oh, okay, great. because I was going to ask more follow-up questions, but they gave me enough information.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you don't want it to look too haphazard, I like to just mass plant in groups and kind of color block and then repeat pattern. So I would do a flower bed where it's like 3 yarrow of the same color, 3 penstemon of the same color, and then like 5 grasses that will like break up all the color and the chaos. And then I might do some scarlet globe mallow because I'm feeling really crazy. So I might do a little bit of orange in there with the scarlet globe mallow, but then the yarrow and the penstemon are back so that you're sort of seeing the pattern of the blue and the yellow and the blue and the yellow. And then more grasses on that side to kind of break that up. But what you don't want is the glitter confetti method of just like, there's a yarrow and a penstemon and a globe mallow and a grass and because that's too enmeshed. So plant 2 or 3 or 4 of the plants of the same plant next to each other, and it's going to grow up into one super plant, and it'll give you a nice like color blocked effect.
And quicker.
Yeah, and it'll look fuller quicker. Sure.
Yeah, I've noticed going on some of the designs with you that you never advocate a single plant, and that you tend to go in odd numbers, like 3 and 5.
But I've been on a 2 kick lately. But
have you?
Just basically like not to make it look like a cute triangle of plants, but just to make it look like one larger plant. Like I'll put 2 of the same thing next to each other, so it's just a bigger version of that plant. But yes, typically I'll do 3, 5s, and 7s because it feels good.
If you want to see placings in action, we have some videos on our YouTube channel of one of our first clients, Marcy, and her property here in Salt Lake City, which is right now looking amazing. And we can't wait for next summer when we actually see this thing fully matured. It's going to be
the 3-year mark. Can you believe it?
A knock your socks off project.
So, crazy. Yeah.
Also from WebJess, are any tips for getting rid of a large amount of garlic mustard? No.
Eat it.
Eat it?
Invasives be invasiving, man. I don't know. You just got to go for it. Can goats eat garlic mustard?
I think they can eat anything.
Did you know, Lee, this is going to be really inside. Sorry for everybody watching. Did you know that we're trying to convince Jackson to be our goat herd?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. So
we have a friend who's a farmer. We're trying to convince him to start a goat rental service.
He's the nicest guy in the world. I could see him pulling down and with his big truck full of goats and then unloading them and playing banjo for them while they graze. So because he's also a musician. So
it's edible to humans, so I think goats could probably eat it.
Yeah.
Goats love to eat garlic mustard and will munch plants to the ground. So you could bring in the goats. You can't hire me yet, but I'm working on it.
We're working on a goat solution. I knew we would eventually. Shelly, as the Oregon grape has been taking over everything and is really prickly, is there anything else that works in a shade pine situation?
It's so funny. I just posted to my Instagram story today. Like there's this thing where it's like when someone says a native plant is too aggressive, and it's Lucille Bluth being like, good for her. Because I'm just like, I don't care that it's aggressive. It's a native plant. I do get that it has some little prickles on it, though. Kinnick is my other go-to evergreen ground cover for shady areas. It would still benefit from some sun, 3 hours of sun a day. But it's pretty shade tolerant. And that's evergreen, low growing. It's like 3 inches tall. So it's really much more like a matte ground cover than an Oregon grape is. You could also just go like wildflowers and stuff. Like you could do like columbine and lupin and some fescue or something and just kind of go kind of woodsy.
Those foresty wildflowers that are used to shade. Yeah.
Violets, that kind of thing.
And I think the reason why I keep getting so excited about Oregon grape is that I tend to have areas in my landscape that I just want to plant something pretty and forget about. Yeah. And that's what that plant seems perfect for. Like I have an area on the north side of my garage that's 5 feet wide and 35 feet long, and we never go to it. So why not just fill it with something that is going to benefit local wildlife and be pretty for my neighbors? I'm never going to see it, but it may not work for everyone.
If I could impart like a lesson or just like a piece of it, landscaping advice onto the world, I think when folks are looking for plants to plant, they Google the plant and they want every single plant to take their breath away. But an actually really balanced, professional looking landscape has focal point plants and filler plants and backdrop plants. And Oregon grape is a backdrop plant. It's an amazing plant. I love using it, but it's not meant to be the Oscar-winning actress. It's meant to be
it's a supporting
the
actor.
ensemble cast, right, in the back. And it looks great as a backdrop. And then it really brings whatever you plant in the front into stark relief and just makes that shine.
Yeah. But as with all things, it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. So, yeah. Okay, folks, we're coming up on the 90-minute mark, so we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we shut things down. We'll take one more question. If one more question pops up, we'll definitely answer it. But if you are interested in our services, please check out our website at yardfarmer.co. And of course, this video will live in perpetuity on our YouTube channel, also yardfarmer.co. Where we're going to be expanding on some basic 101 series things about some of the topics we've covered tonight, whether it's soil preparation, solarizing, basically just landscape basics that will help you get going and have success throughout the year. And there's all kinds of content out there. We just basically want to help people get excited about getting into their yards and enjoying them. Since my wife and I started working with you a while ago, Daryl, we've taken a lot of the principles that we've learned from working with you day to day and applied them to our own yard. And now we can't get enough of it. Like, that's all we want to do is sit in that yard.
Rachel's Instagram stories of her beautiful garden. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's just lush and overgrown. It's a small little jungle and we have little finches all over the place. And it's just like sitting in a little forest in our tiny little strip of yard. And I love it. So, that's something everybody can have with just a little bit of work and a little bit of preparation. So, it looks like we're out of questions. So anything you wanted to...
I saw something I want to answer.
Okay,
go for it. Feeling Frondy, because it's a client.
Oh.
So Feeling Frondy says, I have a consult scheduled with you in September. Thank you for your patience. I am but one human woman. Working as much as I can. I have a consult scheduled with you in September, but the prior owners installed gravel rock borders with weed cloth, which has failed, of course. The entire area is covered in tall, seedy grasses and bindweed. Actually, there was no question, but I'm just going to still give ubiquitous advice here. I would remove the gravel now. And I would get the bindweed manually scraped out as much as possible. And then you could put some black plastic, or even clear plastic would maybe, I don't know, bindweed is hard. Clear or black plastic, I'll let you do the judge, just to solarize that area, because July and August are the perfect time to solarize grass and weeds. That's the ideal time of year. And if we're meeting in September, then you could solarize in July and August and get wood mulch down as soon as you're done solarizing, and then you could be ready to plant, like as soon as we meet and talk about what to plant. So do that, because the gravel's just going to get worse and you're going to have a sad time looking at it all summer.
Actually, we have one more question. We're going to go ahead and answer that one. James Fox just left the live stream. Your channel was suggested. Thank you so much for clicking on that. They have a 1/4 acre garden and a greenhouse. It's relaxing and they never go hungry. And they give away a bunch of it locally. So I guess that's not a question; it's just a comment. So thank you. And that's great. It's always good to share your bounty.
Jennifer Silo says, I have algae in my rain barrels. Is it safe to use? Couple of thoughts here. The short answer: it's safe to use on your landscape. Anytime any water is being brought into the house or used for any other purpose besides just putting it straight into the dirt, there needs to be pretty intense filtration system happening. Now, the fact that you have algae in your rain barrels, I'd give everything a really good disinfectant and a really good clean. And then we want to look and figure out where is your system failing that you're having a lot of algae. And it's almost always light. And so what I see a lot, even the ones that I picked up from the city, the like Salt Lake City rain barrels that we bought, they just have a mesh screen where they're leaving that open and then letting the rain fall on the mesh. And there's a gap between the downspout and the mesh. Algae is going to abound in that system. You want to finagle your rain barrel so that the downpipe is actually just going straight into the rain barrel with some, I don't know, tape or some other fitting around it where no light is allowed to penetrate. And I hope that your rain barrel is black or like a really dark color. If it's not, you should paint them or wrap them in something so that light can't penetrate through the plastic itself. And that's going to make your water a lot better.
Yeah. So again, a little algae is not bad for your yard, but it's definitely bad for you.
Yeah. Don't drink it, obviously.
Yeah.
And if you're really nervous, I might not put it on like leafy greens or like carrots. Anytime there's toxins, this is the same for when people are worried about the rain that's collected off of their roof and it has asphalt on it and chemicals and whatever. Leafy greens and root vegetables are the most likely to uptake any bad stuff from your rainwater. But it's generally understood that anything that fruits, so like a tomato, a squash, a peach from a fruit tree, the toxins are stored in the biomass of the plant, but not in the fruit itself. So point it at either non-edible landscaping like your grass, or at something that isn't like a leafy green or a root vegetable. And like obviously don't use it for like washing your hands or brushing your teeth or anything, because there's a whole bunch of permitting that needs to happen if you're trying to use rainwater in that capacity.
Definitely. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us for the latest round of Yard Farmer Live. We try to do these as often as we can. Sometimes it ends up being every 3 months. But definitely when things start to calm down a little bit in the fall, we will be doing more of these to get people ready for success in the following spring. And some people might say, well, geez, fall seems a little early to get ready for spring success. It is not. It's the best time to start thinking and strategizing for the permaculture landscape design of your dreams, and we can help you with that for sure. So thank you so much, everyone.
You're a spokesperson. It's beautiful. All right. Good night, everybody.